All right. Well, happy Thursday evening. Coming at you live from an undisclosed location in Texas. Welcome to Thursday Night Live. Let me know, as always, if you're watching live, that you can see me and hear me all right. Okay. Hey, Kim. Hey, Chaz. Haruka. Hopefully, you guys can hear me. You know, been kind of off all day. I just was inside the house for a minute and I said to Danielle, "What time is it?" And she says, 10, and we're in Central Time. I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I gotta go." But I hardly ever do that kind of thing. And I also forgot to uh, post the little on the Facebook message chat group for the Lovecraft eZine podcast stuff. Um, yeah, let me know if you can see me and hear me, guys. Pretty sure you can. All right, I'll take that as a yes, and then I'm not just talking to myself. Yeah, I'm hope we get some people because I completely forgot to send a Facebook message, but I did do the email to everyone, and I did post on Facebook, so you know. Uh, so I'm very much looking forward to Necronomicon next weekend. So this is Thursday, August 8th, 2024, and a week from today, I'll be leaving for Providence, Rhode Island. Actually, by this time, I'll already have been there for a few hours. Earlier tonight, I did a Patreon recording for a Patreon podcast of with let's see, it was myself, Matt Carpenter, and Pete Rollick, and we talked about uh, let's see, what's it, Ash Carl? No, we talked about Manly Wade Wellman, and we talked about a couple of other writers, but mostly we talked about Clark Ashton Smith. I don't know why I blanked on his first name when we just spent an hour and a half talking to him. Yeah, we talked about Clark Ashton Smith quite a bit, and Pete and Matt lent their expertise. I'll have that up in a few days. It was a really interesting conversation. I learned some things that I did not know, and this is all a result of one of the Patreons, one of you guys, emailing me with a question and a suggestion for us to talk about. It's the emails from Darren. I don't know if you're watching live, Darren, but um, thank you for the question. The email was this: Your channel brightens my day. Your conversations with the authors and other hosts is very inspiring. Thank you. I was hoping that you would do an interview with Pete Rollick on classic pulp writers like Clark Ashton Smith because I want to start reading more of his work and others. I have a book written by Hugh B. Cave, and I want to know some of his best work. Also, Manly Wade Wellman. Best wishes, Darren. Darren, thanks for the question because it was a really great topic. And like I said, I'll have that up soon. But Clark Ashton Smith, I need to get back into reading him myself. So I do appreciate this reminder. He was very reclusive, and this reflected somewhat in his work as well. Um, Let me find that particular paragraph that I want to read. Impact on his work. Okay. Themes of isolation and decadence. Many of Smith's stories feature protagonists who are themselves isolated or living in decadent, declining civilizations. This mirrors his own sense of seclusion and perhaps his reflections on the impermanence of human achievements. That that is exactly my type of thing. Um, and I just haven't read him in so many years that I'm looking forward to going back and reading him. It, when it's been this long, it's almost like reading for the first time. So I'm probably going to read a couple of Clark Ashton Smith stories in bed tonight. They gave me some excellent suggestions. Matt and Pete did. Pat, for short. Combination between Pete and Matt. Hey, everybody. Jeff, Brandon, Kim, Chaz, Brandon. How much do they charge to tour Lovecraft's estate? Um, I think you're talking about the John Hall, whatever it's called, library. I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm sure it's easy to Google. Um, the walking tours are at Necronomicon are excellent as well. Anyway, how's everybody doing tonight? If you're a Monday through Friday person, then you got one more day to work and that's it. Hey, Edward. Um, so what was I talking about? Clark Ashton Smith. Also, after after we talked, Matt sent me several emails that I haven't had time to look at yet, but some reference notes and so forth. So you guys are going to love this. Jazz, I think you'll get some good recommendations off of this. Um, Thursdays is Friday Junior. Yeah. Let's see here. We talked. I've been talking about Oddity, the horror film Oddity, and as you guys know, I interviewed the director last week, and that's here on the YouTube channel as well. If you haven't found it yet, I asked Damien, the director, when the movie would come out. He said probably within a couple of months, sometime in the fall. Well, good news. It's actually going to be coming out on the 20th of this month, which coincidentally is Lovecraft's birthday. Not that that's why they did it. I'm sure it's not. But let me read you this article. Let's see here. Acclaimed horror thriller Oddity gets digital streaming premiere date. Yeah, I'll read the synopsis again. When Danny is brutally murdered at the remote country house that she and her husband Ted are renovating, everyone suspects a patient from the local mental health institution where Ted is a doctor. However, soon after the tragic killing, the suspect is found dead. A year later, Danny's twin sister, Darcy, a self-proclaimed psychic and collector of cursed items, pays an unexpected visit to Ted and his new girlfriend, Yana. And that's all I'm going to read. I don't want to give away anything. But I know several of you emailed or messaged in response to that it was hard to, you know, not watch the last 10 or 15 minutes of the interview where there were spoilers. And I did tell people ahead of time. So there's no chance that you'll find them accidentally in that interview. But But yeah, August the 20th. Pricing is yet to be announced. Purchase on Prime, Apple TV, and Vudu. I would think that it's going to be on Shutter, but what do I know? He was a lot of fun to chat with, and he had some great insights about horror and horror movies. If you haven't watched the interview yet, he talks about growing up in Ireland and his parents owned a video store and how he was there after school, and just looking through all the VHS covers of all the movies and taking videos home. And sometimes a customer would was looking for a horror movie and it was checked out, but actually Damien had had it for weeks. So it definitely influenced his desire to become a horror movie director. And I really think he's headed for big things. I think he's somewhat in the position that Mike Flanagan was after Absentia, after he directed Absentia on next to no budget at all. But what a great film that is. I've been recommending this for years, but have all of you seen Absentia? That's Mike Flanagan's first movie. I haven't read it yet, Brandon. Hasn't even hit my TBR yet. So it's so high. Yeah, Absentia is a slow burn, but it is really, really worth it. And quite Lovecraftian. So there's that. You know, we're lucky to be living in a more enlightened time. Oh, you got to see Absentia, man. You and Chaz, you guys both have to watch it, and you have to email me or message me and tell me what you think of the movie. So that's the price for these recommendations. You got to tell me what you thought of it, even if you don't like it. That's fine. Well, Brendan, as I always say, don't watch the trailer. Anyway, yeah, I'll watch it tonight. It's creepy. Uh, I was reading about the Kennedy family earlier today. I don't know how I got on that, but I guess one of their daughters, uh, one of JFK's sisters, was to quote, um, she had been increasingly challenging or dispr- displaying erratic behavior and so forth, whatever that means. And their father, I forget his first name. No, I am really batting 1,000 today. Yeah, of course it's Joe. Yeah, he named his first son after himself, Joe Senior. Okay, so anyway, um, he made the decision to get her lobotomized, and at the time, lobotomies were a relatively new and experimental treatment for things like schizophrenia, and even depression and aggressive behavior. And to quote, I should probably pull it up, but to quote the Wikipedia article, it was a disaster. Um, Let me pull it up. So I promise you, there's a point to all of this. Kennedy family. She did not want Rosemary. That's what the young lady's name was. Born 1918, died 2005. Yeah, lot of tragedy. Two sons assassinated, one while president, and then the other one, if I remember correctly, while running for president and just had secured the Democratic nomination. And okay, so here's the quote: increasingly irritable and difficult. In response to these issues, her father arranged a lobotomy on her in 1941 when she was 23 years of age. And they went through the top of the head, Dr. Watts recalled. I think she was awake. She had a mild tranquilizer. Imagine. What a nightmare. After the lobotomy, Kennedy was immediately institutionalized, and she lived at Craig House for the rest of her life. She lived to be like, oh, how long, 95, something like that? 86, excuse me, and was lobotomized in her 20s, and she lived in the same institution for the rest of her life. You know, this was, I suppose I suppose the excuse, if there could be made any excuse that they would have made, especially the father, is that, my doctor recommended this, but it was experimental. And Joe Sr. was he did not want any negative publicity. Yeah, the image of his family was everything. And no, I was reading about some World War II stuff. I watched a little bit of there's a new, well, it's not new, but I noticed it on Hulu, uh, something called Presidents at War, and it's about World War II and 8 men served in World War II who would eventually become the president of the United States. And of course, JFK is one of them. Um, and from that, I somehow got to the Kennedy family, reading about them, and then I got to Rosemary, and then I got to the lobotomy. And there's no really real point to any of this meandering diatribe, except to say that when it was done, when I was done, I was just like shaking my head and immensely sad for that young lady. And no matter what kind of day I have, um, no matter how much pain I'm in, it's all about perspective. And I think about something like that happening to me or to a loved one. And I realize that really I don't have anything to complain about. It doesn't matter how much physical pain I'm in or what mental challenges that I have because of the past, because of childhood. The fact is that I'm very fortunate. I've got a great wife. I've got a wonderful son. Got a quote unquote job that I love. And it's good to, when you have a bad day, put things in perspective in that manner. At least this is what I do. And I mean, it's not about boiling down to, well, somebody always has it worse. But then again, it kind of is. And it doesn't mean you can't ever complain or, you know, pound the wall because you're having a terrible day. Um, you can. That's absolutely just fine. But when it's all said and done, having the perspective that hey man, I could be living in the dark ages, you know, or prehistory, or, well, I'd rather be living in prehistory than the dark ages, or in a society that still allows this to happen. When it's all said and done, I have a lot to be thankful for. I told Matt and Pete at the end of our conversation, I don't know how I got on this either, but I was talking about I started the Lovecraft eZine projects. It went live February 1st, 2011. Yeah, good example, Brandon. And so previous to that, I had made a lot of money in real estate and or was making a lot of money. I'm not saying I had thousands saved because I didn't. But my point is, before I got sick, several years before that, I was making quite a bit of money, and I did enjoy being in real estate. I wasn't a salesman. I looked at my job as, hey, this young couple wants to buy a house, and it's my job to guide them through the process, right? And that's the way I looked at it for both sellers and buyers. You can't talk someone into buying a house. They've already made that decision. All you can do is say, "Oh, do you want to buy a house? Let me be the guy. Let me be the realtor that guides you through this." That's the way I looked at it, just as an aside. And I remember it was a Sunday night. This must have been somewhere around 2007. This was a Sunday night, and I remember going to bed and thinking, I'm getting up to go to work Monday, and I'm really happy that I am. I love my job. I'm making decent money, and we have a nice place to live, and so forth. And I thought about how fortunate I was. Well, the next day, pow! It was it was that sudden. I thought I had the worst flu in the world, and then it just got worse and worse and worse, and so much pain. I didn't know what was going on. Never been to the hospital before that. And Tuesday, a friend took me to the doctor, and my GP, took one look at me and said, "You're going to the hospital." My arm was all swollen up too. And my friend brought me to the hospital, and the doctor had called ahead to say he was sending me there. And I remember them getting a room ready for me, and me just they had me on this cot, and the guy who was going to be my doctor, I just remember weakly saying to him, I had never had any kind of pain medication before this either. Real weakly saying to him, "Hey, do they will they give me something to help with the pain? I just, you know." And he just kind of smiled and he said, "Yeah, you don't have to worry about that." And I remember when they got me into my room, got me in bed, and then they hooked me up to morphine. You guys be sure and tell me if I'm boring you, right? They hooked me up to morphine, and I remember that the pain was like this, like that. It didn't completely go away, but there was just a huge difference. Um, yeah, yeah, morphine's definitely the good stuff. I can see myself getting addicted to that, so it's it, lucky I can't go down to the corner store and grab some because that wouldn't be good. Uh, that's another reason actually I don't play a lot of open world video games because I like to play open world video games, or I have in the past, and it's so easy to just get sucked into that and ignore real life. Um, yeah, hell of a lot of people got addicted a hell of a lot of men got addicted to morphine in World War One, if memory serves. Anyway, that's what happened. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. My uncle had a heart attack, I think almost the same day. He was in Texas with the rest of my family, extended family, and of course I was in Iowa, and I was in the hospital like a week longer than he was. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They couldn't figure it out, and I was so out of it. I don't remember any of this, but Danielle tells me that my arm was just swelling up more and more and more, and whatever it was going to travel up and hit my brain and kill me. And they said they just couldn't figure out what was going on. They kept taking blood from me and running tests on it. And they told Danielle, you're going to have to make a decision if we can't figure this out real quick. You're going to have to make a decision and give us permission to chop off his arm. And here's my arm. So thankfully it didn't come to that. But they still didn't. They still never figured out what it was. They just threw all kinds of uh, antibiotics and other shit at me until something worked. But I went home 2 weeks later, and I remember telling Danielle at home a few days later, well, I guess they don't know what it was, but at least it's over with. So that happened. Uh, 5 or 6 days later, I was in the hospital for another 2 weeks, and what happened was it kicked off this chronic pain or fibromyalgia, whatever you want to call it. Fibromyalgia can, this is, I'm paraphrasing a lot, but basically fibromyalgia, if you've got the right conditions for it in your body, then things like a car accident or some kind of physical trauma like what I went through can kickstart it. This was roughly 2007, John, something like that. And I've got a point to all of this. I was in the hospital another couple of weeks, and even after that, it took them a long time to come up with the fibromyalgia diagnosis, which is really a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning that they know you're in a lot of pain, but since they can't pinpoint why, then they tell you have fibromyalgia. So they don't really understand it. Also, of course, I've done a lot of reading on this. Also, if you've had traumatic things happen to you as a child, that can make you more prone to it as well. I think you're about 15 years or so behind the times on that one, Brandon. Um, no, both genders. And anyway, it's just I may not have fibromyalgia. That's just a label for, hey, this guy's in a lot of pain almost all the time. So as much as we understand about the human body, there are plenty of things that we don't understand. But my point to all of this is that I was making good money. I had a job I really liked, basically working for myself. Um, and then all that changed. But getting back to the conversation with Matt and Pete earlier tonight, what I told them was that I wouldn't go back to real estate, even making all that money. I mean, I don't make much money now, and the little bit I do make is thanks to the Patreons. Um, but it's a hell of a lot less than what I used to make. But I wouldn't go back. If a magic genie appeared before me right now and said, "Hey, Mike, you can go back to real estate. You're not going to have any pain. You're not sick anymore, and you're going to be making all this money again." Um, that's choice A. Or stay where you are with what you're doing, and that's choice B. I would choose option B. Um, I've never cared a lot about money after the bills are paid. Everybody cares about money to get the bills paid, but I just love this community. This is my point to all of this. Uh, I love my fellow panelists. I love this community. I love everything about it. The people are so great. I have made friends that I never would have made otherwise, and that includes you guys. I never would have met Pete, Matt, Joe Pulver, Rick, Bridget, uh, everybody, all the rest of the panelists, you guys, and I'm just really grateful that I have the life that I have. Um, I guess that's the thing about Thursday night. You get to listen to me just babble in a stream of consciousness kind of speech, right? But I'm grateful for you guys. Thanks to the patrons who do support me and let me do this. Um, I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go back. The thing about bad things happening to you is that you can't avoid them. But what you can do is you can control your reaction to them. And my thought has always been, if something terrible happens to me, now I'm not talking about a loved one dying or anything like that, but barring that sort of thing, if something terrible happens to me, like an illness, a chronic illness, and not being able to keep up, keep a lucrative job, how can I turn this into, how can I make something good come out of this? How can I make something good come out of this? Um, and that's what I did. And I try to do that with everything. It's impossible to do it with everything, but I try. If a loved one dies, that I don't look at things that way. I'm not saying that. That's ridiculous. But things like this, or well, I don't know. I can't think of any other examples right now. But we can so much of life we can't control, but we can control our reactions to it. Um, Also, I said in that, you guys will hear this, but I said it in the chat with Pete and Matt about Clark Ashton Smith. This was uh, as a result of Darren's question. As I said, if you guys have a topic that you want us to cover, you want me to cover in a Patreon episode, then email me or message me and let me know. Darren had a great one. That was a nice conversation. I think you guys all have my email, lovecraftezine@gmail.com. But questions that you want us to, to answer, subjects that you want us to cover, um, bring them on. I'm happy to do it. Alan Watts. Why does that name sound familiar? Oh, okay, right. Just looked him up. The Way of Zen, 1957. One of the first and best-selling books on Buddhism. Uh, he sounds awfully familiar, but I've got to I've got to truthfully say that I don't think I've read anything of his. Anyway, um, I try to follow kind of a, yeah, Buddhist, but as a philosophy, Taoism, quite a bit. Wu Wei, one of the tenets of Taoism, going with the flow. My first demonstration about that is was when I was working as a manager at Brugger's, and when I was a kid, I was like 23, 24, and the pop machines in restaurants, they need a CO2 feeding into them as well. So you have to, when it runs out, you got to put a new CO2 canister. And I've got a very eclectic education, John. So I'm still always filling holes since I don't even have a high school diploma. But I was in the back trying to get the plastic lid off of this damn thing so I could put it in with the pop. The customers were waiting on it. So my boss comes back there to see what the holdup is. I was like, I can't get this damn thing off this time. So he was a pretty laid back guy. And I don't know that he knew anything about Taoism because that's not, what he did was he opened up, he unscrewed the CO2 just a tiny bit so that it would open, and that popped the cap off just like that. And then he just looked at me and grinned and walked back up front. But that was a lesson that I never forgot. Um, and years later, well, a couple years later, reading about Taoism, I've always thought about that example. I don't know that he knew a thing about Taoism, but that's a great demonstration of Wu Wei. It's kind of just uh, that's the most concrete example I can think of, but I try to implement it in my life. I suppose you could reduce it to work smarter, not not harder, and that's fair, but there's a little bit more to it than that. Um, I don't know how I got on that topic. How was my arm saved? They kept throwing antibiotics and so forth at me. In fact, they gave me so many antibiotics that it blew out the hearing in my left ear. No, excuse me, my right ear. Still get confused unless I'm talking to somebody. It blew out the hearing in my right ear, but it saved my arm because it's the swelling went down, and that was that, at least with the arm anyway. I can't hear, I can hear very tiny bit out of my right ear, but not, it's almost completely deaf. I would say 90% deaf, but my left ear is normal. In fact, my work paid for me to get some really expensive tests done in Iowa City, and we did some extensive hearing tests, and they concluded that A, yes, your hearing is boot, which I knew already, and B, there's um, there was there's nothing that I could do to help it. In other words, a hearing aid would not help it. That was obviously my first question. Um, the interesting thing about losing your hearing, at least for me, um, who was the night ocean? I've read the Lovecraft Barlow story. Sorry, I'm just looking at you guys' comment. Oh yeah, Paul Lafarge. I had him on the show. He's passed away since then, but he wrote a book called The Night Ocean, um, which is not the same. It's about Barlow, R.H. Barlow, and which is not the same as the Barlow and Lovecraft short story, The Night Ocean, of course. Oh, did you like it? You like The Night Ocean? I forgot you said you were going to read it the other night. Kim, bet it did a number on your GI track. Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. I'm so happy that you loved it. Um, it kind of it can affect your balance. You know, the really interesting thing was that I before then I had never roller coasters didn't bother me, heights didn't bother me, none of that stuff bothered me. I'd go on the biggest coaster at Six Flags and just thought it was a lot of fun. After that, I couldn't even go on a Ferris wheel in our small town. It just it is really weird how losing your hearing in one ear can affect you in that way. So I remember when I really knew, all right, don't do this anymore. We were at Six Flags. Me, Danielle, and Logan were at Six Flags, and you know that one ride um, at parks where you basically sit in a seat and it goes round and around and around, and the more it goes around, the higher you get until you're really extremely high above the ground and you're going in circles. I was sitting by myself, and Danielle and Logan were sitting in the chair in front of me, and this is 2024. I don't know when this was, but they were just laughing like crazy and jibber jabbering and talking, and I was like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. And it's just no more. Okay. The hearing beat me. And the other thing that losing half your hearing does is people forget that you're half deaf. People won't forget if you're deaf, you know, but they'll forget if you're half deaf. They'll forget which ear you're deaf in. And yeah, no more roller coasters for me, John. And for example, last Necronomicon, the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society did another one of their really cool live audio dramas. I forget which Lovecraft story they did, but those guys are great at what they do. And I was, of course, sitting in the audience. And once again, I found out for the millionth time that the thing about being half deaf is if you're in a quiet room or doing a podcast, nobody's talking to me in the room or anything like that, and I'm just talking to the panelists, I'm fine. I'm almost normal. But if I'm in a room with a lot of noise, then I it's not that I can't hear if somebody says something, but it just is a din. It just all runs together. So yeah, I used to love them, Chas. Not anymore, I guess. Hope I'm not boring you guys. I'm slowly getting back on the horse, after Oreo's passed away, and I feel really kind of out of it. Yeah, so check out that Clark Ashton Smith Patreon podcast when I get it up. I'll definitely have it up before I go to Necronomicon next week. Oh, while I'm at Necronomicon, for those of you who can't go, Thanks, John, and thanks, Jazz, everybody. Um, while I'm at Necronomicon, I will do my best to um, post a lot of pictures on the eZine Facebook page, and I will post extra uh, in the Patreon to give the patrons a little bit extra that the public's not getting. Um, so, some videos, pictures, and just a general, hey, here's what's going on. Um, and we're probably going to do a live show, but I can't remember. I think it's on Saturday. I'll give everyone plenty of notice. Uh, I'm going to be doing after the week after we get back. I'm going to be doing a deep background Patreon episode with John Langan. So, send me your questions now. I'll post about this soon. And actually, no, don't send me your questions. I forget. We're not going to do it like we did Laird's last interview. Uh, John said he was happy to do this, but he's like, what would you think of having patrons in there with us, and they can ask me questions directly? And I thought that's a great idea, and I thought it would be a lot of fun. So we're going to do that. I don't know. I don't know the date yet, but I think John is still out of school right now, and he says Wednesday might work the best. That's Wednesday after Necronomicon, so that's a week and a half from now. Um, but we'll get it figured out sometime in the next couple days, and I'll post it for you guys so you can have plenty of advance warning as to when that'll be. So, the other thing about a lot of creative people in this weird fiction community, weird fiction slash Lovecraftian community, um, 95% of them are really great, humble people. Even the ones who are just insanely talented, like John Langan or Nadia Bolkin or Laird Barron, Paul Tremblay, um, it hasn't gone to their head. Ironically, I know of a couple of creative people in the weird fiction community that, with talent or without talent, it definitely has gone to their head. But again, that's such a small percentage. Um, I just love this community. Anyway, so you guys can ask John your questions directly, and yeah, this should be a lot of fun. I think I'm not sure what tier gets that or not, but we'll get it figured out. No matter what tier you're on, you'll definitely get to ask John a question. So you're a writer, Kim. Jeez, I'm sure you know plenty about talent. What would I recommend to ask him? Is that what you're saying? Let me switch over to this other screen. What would you recommend by him? Uh, read The Fisherman. The Fisherman is insanely good. It came out what? Hmm, I don't know. I'm just going by memory, but 8 years ago, something like that. But it, it's still lately it's having another moment, if that makes sense, and rightly so. If you haven't read The Fisherman, you definitely want to start there. Um, it's also it's also the audiobook is also excellent. So if you're an uh, audiobook listener, you can consume it that way as well. Yeah. Who reads the audiobook? I don't know. I just remember thinking that they did a good job. Fisherman Langan audio. Let's see. Danny Campbell. I don't know who that is. But looks like he's read a lot of popular books. Killers of the Flower Moon. Some nonfiction in here. Yeah. Anyway, he did a good job. Very good job. This Sunday, who reads the one I like? Danny Campbell. Um, this Sunday, the guest will be Sean Hamill, who's the only person besides my family who has been in the BookHouse yet, because Sean lives about 30, 40 minutes away at most. Anyway, he's a good guy and a great writer. We're going to be talking about his new novel, The Dissonance, and that's on audiobook as well. I think listening to Alan Watts would be good for your soul, Mike. He's a gifted speaker, so you're in for twice the treat. Okay, thank you. Audiobooks narrated by Alan Watts. All right, I've got it pulled up on a browser tab so I won't forget. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm always looking for a good audiobook. If I'm reading a book and I'm tired and I need to go to bed, it's kind of neat to have the audiobook as well. Can pick up right where um, I left off in reading the book. Porn sometimes helps. That's hilarious. So, one of my philosophies is, or not a philosophy, but something I try to remember a lot. Oh, can I say anything more about it? Okay, yeah, let me read the back. You can never go home again, the saying goes, but Hal, Athena, and Aaron have to. I suppose your most direct comparison would be to Stephen King's It. But anyway, in high school, the three were students of the eccentric Professor Marsh. Marsh, you look out for those marshes. Trained in a secret system of magic known as the dissonance, which harnesses negative emotions, alienation, anger, and pain, until something happened that shattered their coven. 20 years later, terrifying portents and a pointed Facebook invite have summoned them back to Clegg, Texas. In Clegg, their paths collide with that of Owen, a closeted teenager from Alabama whose aborted cemetery seance with his crush accidentally summoned a murderous entity whose desperate driving purpose leads to kidnapping Owen to serve as its Renfield. You have to watch out for murderous entities when you do seances. Just pro tip. As Owen tries to outwit his new master, and as Hal, Athena, and Aaron reckon with how the choices they made as teens might connect to the apocalyptic event unfurling over the Lone Star State, shocking alliances form, old and new romances brew, and three failed adults and one frightened teen are all that stand between reality and oblivion. The Dissonance is a thrilling and beautifully written story of magic and monsters, forgiveness and friendship. This is Sean's second novel. Um, his first was Cosmology of Monsters, which is really wonderful. Wonderful book. He even got a tweet from Stephen King about his first book. So, um, anyway, I often think of this line I read in a I don't know where I read it called it's the laser beam power of focus, and it's just exactly what it sounds like. Um, Obviously, lasers are extremely concentrated. Compare that to a flashlight, which is not. There's more to it than that, but you get the drift. And the point is this. I read this recently, and I really liked it. I actually wrote it on my bulletin board. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. Decide what it is that you really want to accomplish with your life. I wrote after that, the laser beam power of focus. And so I've seen that in my own life over and over. I was very successful in real estate because at the time that was my, as far as work went, that was my one goal was to be uh, as successful in that as I could be. I had monetary goals and everything, but it all boiled down to that. My goals are different now, um, but if you're trying to do something else I read recently went along the lines of this, you're not overwhelmed, you're just focusing on the wrong things. In other words, it does boil down to deciding, and it it's kind of like when you write, there you have to kill your darlings. There's paragraphs, chapters, scenes that you might have to that doesn't make the final cut. And those are kind of painful choices, right? Um, it can also be painful realizing that you can't do everything. And when you try to do everything, you tend to get almost nothing accomplished. But if you decide what is the one to two things that I really want to accomplish in my life right now, and it doesn't mean forever. That used to be my in real estate. That used to be my goal, but that chapter is closed, and I'm in a new chapter in my life. So, what is the one thing if you died tomorrow and you didn't get this accomplished that you'd be upset that you didn't? Um, if you can answer that, then that's the one thing that you need to focus on. And I don't want to sound like Tony Robbins or a self-help book or anything like that. I just want to point out that some of the things that have helped me, um, and maybe it'll help you as well, especially as you get older. And I kind of, 16 or 17 years ago, I got old, just like that. And I learned, and I'm still learning not to bite off more than I can chew. But I've got my focus down to just a couple of things as far as work goes. I'm not talking about family or friendships or anything like that. And it helps. You can't do everything. So just ask yourself, what is that thing that if I don't accomplish it and I'm on my deathbed, and I realized I didn't accomplish it, I'm going to be pissed at myself. Then that's the thing that you need to focus on. I don't know what it is for you. I know what it is for me right now, and it it works. And keep it. You can do anything, but keep it realistic. If you're one thing that you want to, or one goal that you want to, night Chaz, thanks. Well, you can listen to me on earbuds. Um, you're prolific, Kim. That's great. You're right, Chaz. You're right, Chaz. Tell her I told you. Um, I don't know what was I saying? I don't know what it is for you. I know what it is for me. And don't make your goal. I want to be Stephen King. I want to be get rich from writing. I want to um, be famous. Okay, you can make your goal anything you want it to be, but don't set yourself up for failure. There's a there's you can set yourself up for failure if you set an unrealistic goal, but at the same time, don't use that mentality to make your goals so low that they're not really stretching you. Um, but if you're a writer, is it realistic to make a goal that you're you want your books to reach a lot of people, and you want um, to know that people are reading them and that it's affecting their lives in a positive way? Sure, that's a very reasonable goal. Is it a reasonable goal to want to be a painter or a writer or a podcaster or whatever, fill in the blank, and make a living from it? Yeah, sure it is. It is realistic. But at the same time, um, I interviewed someone one time, and she said something really interesting. Um, she said that you have to be willing to be poor if you want to make a living from that creative thing that you do. And I think that if you're making a living from the creative thing that you do, um, you've won, right? You've won. You're doing great, and it's only any extra money is gravy. It depends on what's important to you too. I mean, I know writers that they seem to be they seem to want to write in order to be famous or admired or make a lot of money. Um, I think that's the wrong reason to be creative. Um, I think for me, not just in addition to the laser beam goals that I have, I always have another mental goal, an emotional goal that I keep in mind the entire time. And that is, in a word, peace. I want peace as much as is reasonable or possible. I want peace in my heart and as little drama as possible. I think that making a lot of money or being well known or winning awards or whatnot, what 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 is the use of that if you don't have peace in your heart if you're always worried about the future, or if you're driving yourself to just produce, produce, produce. I have a friend who said, he's a writer, he said something to me about, I'm on my X number of novels, and most writers in my position, they're two or three ahead of me. And that's not the way to look at things, because we're all on our own journey. That's the other thing that can rob you of peace. One of the almost more than anything else, is comparing yourself to other people. There's a saying, comparison is a thief of joy. And the problem with comparing yourself to someone else, is that it is absolutely never apples to apples. Whenever you compare people, you're always comparing apples to oranges, because nobody has grown up exactly the same way. No one has the same advantages that you have exactly, or the same disadvantages that you have. What good is it for me to compare myself to other guys in their 50s that aren't sick? That's just insane. So a real easy way for me, for my peace to be robbed, is to do that, to compare myself with someone who's in perfect health or wonderful health. Of course, social media really encourages that, doesn't it? You're reading your Facebook or Twitter or whatever social media stream, and then you see friends or acquaintances, and they're like, I just sold my 28 millionth novel as I was writing on the sands of a beach in Hawaii, and my wife is the most beautiful woman in the world, and my kids are fabulous. You know, um, yeah, but what's going wrong in that person's life? They're not going to post about that. Well, maybe they are, but my point is that social media encourages that comparison of yourself with somebody else, even unconsciously. And not saying social media is evil. It's not. But it very easily can make you feel like you're not enough. You're not doing enough. You're not good enough. You'll never be as talented as this person or that person. Um, yeah, Kim, you're right. 100 years ago, you could have been one of those poor lobotomized women. So, when things are going wrong, just all of us, we have to put it in perspective. There's I'll let you guys go, but I want to say a couple more things. I'm looking it up. 1 second here. I didn't think I was going to talk about this, so I'm just a Rolling Stone. There we go. All right, this is a song called. Oh, yeah, I wanted to touch on what you said just now, Kim. I've experienced such incredible beauty that most people won't ever know just from living their own lives in a normal way. Yeah, if you don't don't try to fit a square peg into a round hole, and some people, they can get up every day and all they want is really to go to their 9 to 5 job, come home, crack a beer and watch the game, and they're happy doing that, and that's fine. More power to them. I'm not saying we're better than them or anything like that. I'm just saying don't try to be them if you're not them. Um, per your comment, Kim, this song is called "A Place Called Home" by Kim Ritchie, Richey. And one of the verses goes like this: I had a chance to settle down, get a job and live in town, work in some old factory, but I never liked the foreman standing over me. Excuse me. I'd rather walk a winding road, rather know the things I know, see the world with my own eyes. No regrets, no looking back, and no goodbyes. Um, Another way of saying what you wrote a few minutes ago, Kim. So I didn't plan to get all into that, but I hope you guys had a good time listening to me talk. Thanks for being here. Thanks for spending part of your Thursday late night with me. Obviously, there won't be one next week, or maybe there will. Maybe if I'm awake at 11 p.m. Eastern next Thursday night, if I'm still awake, you know what? I probably will hop on for a few minutes. Just depends. If I'm out having a beer, I won't. So let's play it by ear. There will be a Tuesday night reading, of course, and there will be a Sunday show, I believe, of sorts, but it's probably going to be on Saturday. But if you just keep an eye on the YouTube channel here, and then you'll know what's what. Thanks, John. Thanks, Edward. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope I get to meet all you guys in person someday at a Necronomicon or HP Lovecraft Film Festival or some other convention. But if any of you listening are going to be at Necronomicon, please come find me and say hello. Let's hang out. So anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you on Sunday. Have a good one.